The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for over 50,000 years. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had witnessed the birth of new civilizations and the death of old ones. They believed they understood every type of intelligent life that could possibly exist in the universe. They were wrong. When the scout ship from the collective first detected signals coming from a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system, they expected to find another primitive species. The planet was classified immediately as a Category 7. This was the highest danger rating any planet could receive. The gravity was crushing. The atmosphere was filled with a corrosive gas called oxygen. The surface was covered with liquid monoxide, a universal solvent that could dissolve almost anything. Massive storms ravaged the land. The ground itself would shake and split open without warning. Mountains would explode and pour liquid rock across the surface. And the creatures that lived there spent every moment of their existence trying to kill and eat each other. The scientists were certain that no intelligent life could possibly evolve on such a hellish world. They were prepared to mark it as uninhabitable and move on. Then they intercepted the radio signals. Someone was broadcasting from that nightmare planet. Someone had not only survived there but had developed technology. Ambassador Al of the Collective was chosen to make first contact with these impossible beings. He was considered brave among his people. He had negotiated with the warrior clans of the hegemony. He had walked among the hive minds of the Collective 7. He believed he was prepared for anything. When his ship landed on the surface of Earth, he realized how little he truly understood. The humans came to greet him. They walked upright on two legs, moving with a confidence that seemed almost aggressive. Their bodies were covered in strange fabric. Their eyes were forward-facing like predators. They smiled at him, showing their teeth. Had to remind himself that this was apparently a friendly gesture for their species. Among every other known civilization, showing teeth was a threat display. The first meeting went well enough. The humans were curious and welcoming. They seemed genuinely excited to meet beings from another world. Al submitted his report to the Galactic Council. He described humans as primitive but friendly. He recommended peaceful integration into galactic society. He believed this would be simple. The Council agreed to send a delegation to formally welcome humanity into their ranks. They sent representatives from 12 different species. They brought gifts and offers of trade. They expected gratitude and submission. What they received was something entirely different. The humans listened politely to the Council's terms. They were told they would be given protected status as a developing species. They would be allowed to exist under the guidance of more advanced civilizations. Their planet would be administered by a joint committee of council members. Their military capabilities would be limited for the safety of the galaxy. Their expansion into space would be controlled and monitored. The human representative, a female named General Sarah, thanked the delegation for their offer. Then she declined. She explained that humanity would be happy to join the galactic community as equal partners. They would trade fairly and negotiate honestly, but they would not accept protected status. They would not give up control of their planet. They would not limit their military, and they would not ask permission to explore the stars. The council delegates were shocked. No primitive species had ever refused their terms. The representative stepped forward. He was the largest being in the room, standing 3 meters tall with armored plates covering his body. He told General that humanity did not have a choice. They would accept the council's terms or they would face the consequences. General looked up at the massive alien warrior. She did not step back. She did not look away. She simply asked what consequences he meant. He explained that the council controlled a fleet of over 10,000 warships. They had conquered hundreds of worlds. They had crushed every rebellion in their history. Humanity had barely reached their own moon. There was no possible way they could resist. General smiled. She told the representative that humanity had a saying. They called it punching above their weight. She said humans had spent their entire existence fighting against impossible odds. They had survived ice ages and plagues. They had fought wars that killed millions of their own kind. They had built weapons capable of destroying their entire planet. And they had done all of this while living on a world that was actively trying to kill them every single day. She told the delegation that if the council wanted war, humanity would give them one. But she warned them that they had never faced an enemy like humans before. She said her people did not know how to surrender. They did not know how to give up. They would fight until the last human was dead, and even then, they would probably find a way to keep fighting. The delegation left Earth convinced that humanity was simply arrogant. They reported to the council that these primitive beings needed to be taught a lesson. A small fleet was assembled. 50 warships were sent to bring humanity under control. The council expected the matter to be resolved within a standard rotation. The fleet arrived in Earth's solar system and demanded immediate surrender. The humans responded by launching everything they had. Missiles streaked through space. Nuclear weapons detonated against alien shields. Human pilots flew their primitive craft directly into enemy ships, sacrificing themselves to cause damage. The Council fleet destroyed most of the human defenses easily, but they took losses. They lost 3 ships to beings who should not have been able to scratch their paint. The fleet commander ordered the bombardment of Earth's major cities. He expected humanity to surrender after seeing their civilization destroyed. Instead, the attacks only made them angrier. Humans who had been fighting each other for centuries suddenly united against a common enemy. Factories that had been producing consumer goods switched to weapons production overnight. Scientists who had been working on civilian research began developing new ways to kill aliens. The Council realized they had made a terrible mistake. They had awakened something dangerous. They sent a larger fleet, 200 ships this time. The humans were ready. They had learned from the first attack. They had studied the alien technology. They had adapted. Human engineers had reverse-engineered pieces of destroyed Council ships. They had built new weapons based on what they learned. Human soldiers had trained specifically to fight alien infantry. Human pilots had developed new tactics designed to exploit weaknesses in Council ship designs. When the Second Fleet arrived, they faced a very different enemy. The battle lasted for 3 weeks. The Council fleet won in terms of ships destroyed, but they lost over half their force to an enemy that should have been helpless. Worse, they failed to achieve their objective. Earth remained free. Humanity remained defiant. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. They had never faced anything like this before. Every other primitive species had either surrendered immediately or been crushed within days. Humanity just kept fighting. They lost every major battle but somehow refused to lose the war. The Council decided to send their full military might, over 5,000 warships, the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. This time, they would not just defeat humanity, they would exterminate them. They would burn Earth to ash and salt the ground so nothing would ever grow there again. They would make an example that would terrify other species for generations. The fleet entered the solar system expecting a desperate last stand. What they found was something else entirely. During the months since the last attack, humanity had not just rebuilt, they had evolved. They had taken every piece of alien technology they could find and improved it. They had built ships of their own, crude but functional. They had established hidden bases throughout the solar system. They had prepared traps and ambushes that the Council could never have predicted. But their most dangerous weapon was not technological, it was psychological. The humans had sent messages throughout the galaxy. They had contacted other species who lived under Council rule. They had asked a simple question. If humans could fight the Council, why couldn't everyone else? Rebellions began breaking out across Council space. Species that had been oppressed for thousands of years suddenly found their courage. They had seen that resistance was possible. They had watched primitive humans bloody the nose of the most powerful organization in the galaxy. If those crazy beings from the could do it, maybe they could too. The Great Fleet found itself fighting on multiple fronts. Ships had to be pulled back to deal with uprisings. Supply lines were disrupted. The unified council began to fracture as member species started questioning whether this war was worth the cost. The final battle above Earth was devastating. Both sides suffered catastrophic losses. The Council fleet was larger, more advanced, more experienced, but the humans had something the Council had never encountered. They had an absolute refusal to accept defeat. They had soldiers who would charge into certain death if it meant their families might live. They had scientists who worked themselves to exhaustion finding new ways to fight. They had an entire population that would rather die free than live as slaves. When the battle ended, the Council fleet retreated. They had technically won. They had destroyed most of humanity's military capability. They had killed millions, but they had not broken humanity's spirit, and they had lost too many ships to continue. The Galactic Council sued for peace. They offered humanity full membership as an equal partner. They offered trade agreements and technology sharing. They offered everything they had originally. General accepted on behalf of her species, but she added one condition. The Council would never again try to subjugate any species. The era of galactic empire was over. The document was signed. Humanity joined the galactic community not as a protected species, but as the most feared warriors in known space. Other civilizations looked at them with a mixture of awe and terror. They were the species that had fought impossible odds and refused to lose. They were the beings who had grown up on a planet so dangerous that war barely registered as unusual. Years later, a young alien student asked Ambassador Al why humans were considered so dangerous. The old diplomat thought carefully before answering. He said it was not their technology, though they learned frighteningly fast. It was not their numbers, though they bred like insects. It was not their strength, though their bodies were terrifyingly resilient. It was their spirit, he explained. Humans came from a world where death waited around every corner. They had evolved to never give up. They had developed cultures that celebrated fighting against impossible odds. They told stories where the hero was supposed to lose but won through sheer determination. They actually enjoyed challenge and conflict. They found peace boring. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake when they tried to conquer Earth. They had assumed that because humans were primitive, they would be easy to control. They had not understood that the same forces that made Earth had forged humanity into the most dangerous species in existence. They were survivors, they were fighters, and they would never, ever stop. That, Al told the student, was why every species in the galaxy now knew one simple truth. You do not start a war with humans, because they will not stop until they win, and they always find a way to win.